All right, so earlier I was talking about how I thought conventions were based around comics, and I got so rudely and correctly corrected by Chris Rachel. But
Some conventions are. I'll give you that.
let's let's face facts. Comics have changed an awful lot.
They really have.
As the decades have
They
passed.
really have. I grew up reading comics, and at this point, to be honest, I can't think of a single comic, mainstream DC or Marvel comic, that I would give to an 11-year-old.
See, I totally disagree. Like,
Really?
I would let my son read
What would
whatever he
you-
wanted to read. You were talking about like Punisher. I'm not going to let a little kid read Punisher if he doesn't know the difference between right and wrong and real and fantasy. You know?
That's true, but at the same time, I don't know that I would give them an X-Men comic. I grew up reading X-Men. I love X-Men.
What's wrong with
but,
X-Men?
I specifically wouldn't give them Ultimate X-Men that you'd mentioned being okay with, because I don't really want to have to explain incest to an 11-year-old.
It's a comic book. It probably happens more often than not. I think it even happens in regular X-Men.
I'm pretty sure they haven't had the twins boning in regular X-Men. At least I hope not. Please don't.
All right, so comic book readers up here, right?
Yep.
Have you?
I am.
What are your thoughts on how comics are going these days?
Now, I haven't been able to get my hands on a couple of the more newer comics and whatnot, but from what I can understand, it's just generally quality drop since I don't even know when. But
I feel like the biggest problem with it, and I'm curious if other people would agree with me on this, in the 90s, comics were still mostly aimed at kids, and it was something that if you happen to enjoy them as an adult, that's awesome, but they've decided instead of staying aimed at kids and then just hope that people will fill in the gaps of their imagination, that they're going to age with their audience. So at this point, comics are aimed at 40-year-old single men and not at anybody else. And so it's like, hey, we're going to be as twisted as we can in our...
Why does it have to be 40-year-old single men? That's definitely classifying the entire comic book community as old losers who live in a basement.
And I don't feel like it has been that way historically, but I do feel like if you go into a modern comic shop, the difference between comic books and comic movies. Comic movies are something that you can watch with a mixed gender environment, with a mixed age environment. Everybody's going to get something out of them. Comic books, on the other hand, like, they're kind of rape-tastic these days. The type of violence doesn't make as much sense as it used to. They're really not aimed at a broader audience. They've
comic
really
books
narrowed in their audience.
Are you reading that or rape-tastic? Because I read all of Ultimate Spider-Man, no rapes. I read most of Ultimate X-Men, there were no rapes. I read all of Fantastic Four.
All the Ultimate lines that you're mentioning are from the early 2000s.
And before that, do you think rape is a common thing in comic books? I mean, am I right?
Yeah, rape's a really common thing in comic books.
Actually, in the 90s, there's all.
In the 90s? Well, the
And
90s
there's-
were a
Yeah.
dark, dark period, Pocky D.
Rob Liefeld happened in the 90s.
Okay,
Like the whole new the DC 52 reboot, it's pretty grim. I mean, I'm more of a Marvel girl anyway, but that really convinced me. Like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay over here on this side of the fence. You guys are awful.
what do you think?
Batgirl.
Yeah.
Batgirl. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah,
Batgirl.
I'm with you.
Okay, I'm not. What?
She killed her own brother.
Batgirl killed her own brother? God, Pocky D, you know all this stuff.
The point is, I understand that once the Comics Code Authority was repealed, they're like, hey, we're going to get out there, we're going to do all the things we haven't been able to do over the last 50 years. And they've been doing that for about 15 years now. And there gets to a point where you're like, wow, yet another ridiculously violent thing. Yeah, yet another scene that you couldn't have done in the 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
whatever.
I don't
but
think
they're
you
not
could-
telling good stories at this point. The movies
No.
are having fun with it.
I disagree. They tell really good stories, but I don't
What
think...
have you read that has come out in the last 2 years?
I thought the Civil War... I don't know, last year's, I don't know, but I thought Civil War was really
I don't know
good.
about the recent ones. The Civil War's 10 years old now.
It shows how far behind I am on things. But I think the problem is today's market, you can't tell the same stories you did back then because everything has changed. I mean, the entire culture has changed. You can't tell the happy-go-lucky story anymore. You got to have some grit to it because that's what
They've
everyone
always
sees.
been gritty, though. I mean, the whole point of the
I don't
the whole point of the X-Men was always angst with a side of more angst. So it's not like they've
some
ever
gravy
been
on top?
with a
Some
little bit of
angst
angsty
gravy?
gravy on top.
Come
Yeah.
on.
It's not like they've ever been happy-go-lucky. Honestly, the Justice League has been the place where you would get more of the happy stuff, and they've decided, oh no, we're not going to do any funny stories anymore. Screw that with the Justice League. It's all got to be gritty.
Because you know why they'd change it? Because nobody was buying.
I disagree.
I don't think
I
anybody was
completely
buying the
disagree.
DC stuff, which is why they rebooted it.
The problem is, again, before they did that reboot, though, they'd already decided that they were going to only be targeting, again, aging with their market instead of trying to keep it broader.
Hold on, let's ask them. Do you buy Marvel or DC?
I usually buy both if I'm in the mood to buy them.
I'm not talking to you anymore. How about you? Marvel or DC?
A majority of the comics that I own are Marvel.
Okay, so 2 Marvel. I'm not counting your DC. Sorry. You're out of luck on that one.
I understand.
No, but he buys both. So which do you actually prefer?
I usually prefer Deadpool.
Deadpool's fun.
Marvel.
The thing that people like about Deadpool, he has a sense of humor. He still has a sense of whimsy. Honestly, of all the comics, I think I'd give a Deadpool comic to a kid before I'd give a lot of the other ones out.
Yeah.
Really?
Dead serious.
That's
Yeah,
the most
and
violent
there's
comic
also
Because-
X-20. forgot
Oh,
the-
I wouldn't give any X-23 comics.
I
to
know
people.
they're violent, but there's also the other one. Let me see if I remember this one.
Wolverine and the X-Men.
Yeah, Wolverine and the X-Men was okay.
Wolverine and the X-Men.
He runs his school.
I just think
Yeah, but I like Emma Frost.
Of course you do, because
She ran.
tape on as her clothes.
all right, so we're gonna just have to agree to disagree on this comic situation. I think there's nothing wrong with comics today.
You haven't read any of them though. All you've read are the older comics.
Granted, I haven't read anything like
I haven't read anything that's recent, and by the way, all the comics I'm referencing are 14 years old. But comics haven't changed at all these days.
Well, if you say there's nothing but rape in them, I don't know why I'd read
I'm not
them.
saying it's not. I'm not saying it's nothing but rape. I'm saying that there's like X-23's origin story is all about how she had to go out get raped and had to go be a prostitute because she's a clone of Wolverine that they made a girl. Like every time you've got the feminine version of a character they put out there, that's what she's had to do.
All
That's
right,
what they do every
so-
single time.
We're gonna get back to some more GeekFest fun.
This was supposed to have been a discussion of the comics versus the movies. I'm not sure how it went this direction, but whatever.
I think it was when he said rape-tastic, actually. So thanks, guys, for being on. We'll catch you guys on the floor.
Alrighty.